The three moons of Verilon cast long purple shadows across the ruined landscape as Talon, Kvora stared out from the doorway of her dwelling. Her tall, angular frame remained motionless, four-fingered hands gripping the doorframe as her amber eyes scanned the horizon. 6 years since the Terran-Viralti War had ended, and still she expected to see enemy ships descending from the clouds. 6 years since Commander Naren Kvora, her mate and bond partner, had fallen in the Battle of Proxima Ridge. "Mother, I'm going scavenging." The high-pitched voice of her daughter Illyra broke through her thoughts. The young Viralti, barely into her 9th cycle, bounded toward her with characteristic energy that even war and loss couldn't diminish. Talon's facial ridges softened slightly. "Stay within the outer ridge. Be back before second moonrise." Illyra's head crest fluttered with excitement, a trait she'd inherited from Naren. "I will. Maybe today I'll find something good in the old settlement area." Before Talon could protest, Illyra had darted off, her life form quickly disappearing among the twisted metal and stone ruins that had once been a thriving Viralti colony. Talon clicked her mandibles in frustration. Once, she had been Battalion Commander Kvora, feared warrior of the stellar Viralti forces. Now she was simply a widow, a shell housing memories and regret. She retreated inside their makeshift home, a former military bunker partially buried in the hillside, reinforced with salvaged materials. It wasn't much, but it kept them safe from the caustic rains and wandering scavengers. Most colonists had abandoned Verilon after the treaty, but Talon couldn't leave. Naren's memorial stone stood on the ridge where they had once watched the Tri-Moons rise. Hours passed as Talon mechanically maintained their water purification system. The work kept her hands busy while her mind drifted through battlefields of memory. She barely registered the lengthening shadows until a frantic pounding at the door jolted her alert. "Mother, Mother, help." Illyra's voice carried panic Talon hadn't heard since the bombing raids. Talon reached the door in 3 long strides, warrior instincts flooding back. Her hand automatically reached for the pulse rifle mounted beside the entrance. "What is it? Are you hurt?" she demanded, scanning for injuries. "Not me," Illyra panted. "Him. He's hurt badly. Please, Mother, we have to help him." Only then did Talon notice the figure slumped against the outer wall. A human male, bloodied, and barely conscious. His tactical gear was tattered, bearing insignia she recognized from the Terran Expeditionary Force. Her mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. "A human? You brought a human here?" The word tasted bitter in her mouth. He was trapped under fallen debris near the old communications tower. Illyra explained, her voice pleading. "He saved me when more of it started collapsing. Please, Mother. He's not like the ones who hurt Father." The human stirred, raising his head with visible effort. His face was weathered, a long scar running from temple to jaw. Eyes the color of Verilon's deep oceans met hers. "Sorry for the intrusion," he managed, his voice rough. "Jake Harris, ex-sergeant, just trying to reach the evacuation point." He coughed, a thin line of red trickling from his mouth. "Help the kid, then I'll go." Talon stood frozen, past and present colliding. Every instinct screamed to drive this remnant of war away from her home, her child. Yet Illyra's pleading gaze held her in place. "The evac point was abandoned 3 cycles ago," Talon said flatly. "Nothing there now but ruins." The human, Jake, closed his eyes briefly. "Figures," he murmured. "Command always had outdated intel." Against her better judgment, Talon stepped aside. "Bring him in," she told Illyra. "We'll treat his wounds, then he leaves." As they half-carried the human inside, Talon felt something crack within her. Not healing, not yet, but perhaps the first shift in years of unchanging grief. Whatever this human brought with him, she sensed her carefully constructed isolation was about to end. Jake Harris woke to unfamiliar sensations, the metallic tang of Viralti medicine on his tongue, the low hum of alien technology, and the curious gaze of a young Viralti child watching him intently from the foot of his makeshift bed. "You're awake," Illyra chirped, her head crest fluttering with excitement. "Mother said your lung was punctured, but our meaty seal fixed it. She knows how to treat humans because she studied enemy physiology during the war." Jake winced as he tried to sit up, feeling the tight pull of regenerative bandages across his ribs. "That's comforting, I think." "She was very careful," the Lyra assured him. "I watched to make sure." The dwelling was sparse but functional, a military mindset evident in its organization. Jake recognized the practical efficiency of a soldier's space. His eyes traveled to the doorway where Talon now stood, her tall frame rigid with distrust. 3 broken ribs, punctured lung, significant blood loss, she stated clinically. "You would have died without treatment." "Thank you," Jake replied, meeting her amber gaze. "I owe you my life." Talon's facial ridges tightened. "You owe Illyra," she insisted. Over the next several days, Jake regained strength. Despite Talon's initial declaration that he would leave once healed, they both recognized the reality. The nearest human outpost was hundreds of kilometers away, and his emergency beacon had been damaged beyond repair. To earn his keep, Jake began fixing things around their dwelling. His engineering training from the military proved useful as he repaired their failing heating system and reinforced the structure against Verilon's violent seasonal storms. "You were battalion commander," Jake observed one evening, noticing the insignia on a uniform Talon kept folded in a storage compartment. "7th Stellar Division. I encountered your forces at Proxima." Talon froze, her hand stilling on the meal she was preparing. "Yes. You were formidable opponents," he offered, "respected by our commanders. Yet we still lost." Her voice carried years of bitterness. "Nobody won that war," Jake replied quietly. "Not really." Later that night, as Talon stood outside watching the tri-moons rise, she heard Illyra's laughter from inside, a sound so rare it seemed almost foreign. The human was teaching her daughter some kind of game involving patterns traced in the air. Something twisted in Talon's chest. Illyra needed more than a grieving mother's half-presence. The child deserved laughter, learning, life beyond survival. Things Talon had been unable to provide since Naren's death. As days turned to weeks, Jake's presence became less intrusion and more integration. He never pushed Talon for conversation, but worked steadily, respectfully around their home. When nightmares woke him shouting in the darkness, Talon recognized the haunted look in his eyes, the same one that greeted her in reflective surfaces. They were both broken by the same war, just on opposite sides. One evening, as bioluminescent insects created constellations in the valley below, Jake joined Talon at her lookout position. "The enforced peace feels hollow sometimes," he said without preamble. Talon's mandibles clicked softly in agreement. "Peace by treaty isn't the same as peace by understanding." "Is that why you stayed when others left?" She turned to study him, this human who carried scars both visible and hidden. "I stayed because Naren is here." The admission felt raw, exposed. "My mate died defending this colony. His spirit remains in these hills." Jake nodded, offering no platitudes, no empty comforts, just understanding. "And you?" Talon asked after a long silence. "Why did you come to this abandoned world?" Jake looked out at the alien landscape that had nearly claimed his life. "To find something I lost during the war." His voice dropped lower. "Though I'm not sure what that is anymore." The distance between them, physical, cultural, historical, suddenly seemed both vast and insignificant. 2 warriors adrift after the battles had ended, searching for purpose in a peace neither had been prepared to survive. The season of acid rains came, confining them to the dwelling for days at a time. Proximity bred familiarity, and familiarity gradually eroded the sharpest edges of Talon's resentment. Illyra thrived with Jake's presence, absorbing his stories of Earth and human customs. He taught her to play chess with pieces fashioned from salvaged materials, and in return, she showed him Viralti meditation techniques. Talon watched their interactions with growing complexity of emotion. Gratitude mingled with a strange protectiveness she hadn't felt since Naren. He was kind, Talon said unexpectedly one night, as Jake told Illyra bedtime stories in the next room. Naren. Everyone saw the warrior, the strategist. Few saw his gentleness. Jake looked up, surprised by the voluntary information. That's often the way with the best commanders. They carry both strength and compassion. He would have liked peace. She continued, the words finding their way out after years imprisoned in grief. He fought because it was necessary, not because he believed in the cause. Toward the end, few of us did. Same for many of us, Jake admitted. Politicians and corporations drove the conflict. We were just the bodies they sacrificed. The shared understanding opened a channel between them. Slowly, story by story, they exchanged memories of the war, not as enemies recounting battles, but as survivors processing trauma. Jake told her about losing his squad at Proxima Ridge, the same battle where Naren had fallen. The possibility that they had faced each other directly hung unspoken between them. During a violent storm that rattled their shelter, power systems failed. Jake worked feverishly alongside Talon to restore critical functions before temperatures dropped dangerously low. Their hands brushed as they reconnected circuits, and Talon felt an unfamiliar current that had nothing to do with electronics. Later, huddled under thermal blankets with Illyra sleeping between them, Jake spoke softly of his life before the war. An engineering student drafted into conflict, dreams deferred, and eventually forgotten. What were your dreams? He asked Talon. The question startled her. No one had asked about her desires in so long. To explore the outer systems, she admitted. To map unknown stars. Jake smiled. A navigator at heart then. Naren used to say I was born with cosmic dust in my blood. The memory, for the first time, brought warmth instead of pain. As the storm subsided and life resumed its rhythm, Talon found herself seeking Jake's company rather than merely tolerating it. His presence had become necessary, somehow, like a missing piece of their small family unit that she hadn't known was absent. The realization terrified her. Dawn broke with ominous silence. The raiders' ships, 5 battered vessels cobbled together from various technologies, descended through Verilon's atmosphere like predatory birds. Remember, Talon instructed the nervous colonists. Timing is everything. Hold positions until the signal. Jake led a small team to the southern perimeter, where they had prepared an elaborate deception. Heat signatures and motion sensors rigged to suggest a much larger defensive force. Illyra had been left with the colony's elders in a secure underground shelter, though she had protested fiercely, her warrior heritage already evident. Be careful, Talon had told Jake before they separated, words inadequate for all she wanted to express. He had pressed his forehead against hers in the Viralti gesture of deep connection. Always, the raiders took the bait, splitting their forces to address the phantom threat Jake had created. When they realized the deception, it was too late. Talon's team had already disabled 2 of their ships from the ridge positions. Gunfire and energy weapons lit up the valley. Talon moved with lethal precision, her warrior training returning fully as she led her people in defense of their home. Through the chaos, she caught glimpses of Jake, a human fighting alongside Viralti, protecting a world not his own. The turning point came when raiders breached the eastern perimeter, threatening to flank their position. Jake intercepted them, drawing fire to allow Talon's team to regroup. She watched in horror as an energy pulse struck him squarely in the chest, throwing him backward against the rocky cliff face. Something primal and fierce erupted within Talon, not the cold battle rage of her military training, but a protective fury born of love. She charged the raider position with a battle cry that echoed across the valley, inspiring the colonists to surge forward in a final coordinated assault. The raiders, facing unexpected resistance and losing ships, finally retreated, leaving their wounded and dead behind. Talon found Jake slumped against the rocks, blood seeping through his makeshift armor. "Not exactly how I planned it," he gasped as she knelt beside him. "Be silent," she ordered, applying pressure to his wound. "I did not find you across the stars only to lose you now." His hand covered hers, weaker than it should be. "Found each other," he corrected. "That's the important part." As medical teams worked to stabilize him, Talon maintained her vigil. Hours later, the colony's physician, a former military medic, emerged from the treatment room. "His physiology is different, but humans are resilient," she reported. "He will recover, though not quickly." Relief unlike anything Talon had felt since the war's end washed over her. Only then did she allow herself to tremble, the accumulated fears and hopes of these past months crystallizing into certainty. When Jake regained consciousness, Alara was curled beside him on the medical cot, refusing to leave his side. Talon sat nearby, maintaining her warrior's composure despite the turmoil within. "The colony?" Jake asked immediately. "Safe," Talon assured him. "The raiders will spread word that this settlement is well defended. We will have peace for some time." "Good," he murmured, then glanced at Alara. She refused to leave. Talon's mandibles clicked in amused affection. She said her father needed her strength to heal. Jake's eyes widened at the word father, then softened with emotion. "Talon, When Naren died," she interrupted, needing to speak the words that had finally clarified during her vigil, "I believe the future died with him. I preserved his memory by refusing to create new ones." She took Jake's hand, her 4 fingers intertwining with his 5. "But memory dishonors no one. And love is not finite." "No," Jake agreed, his voice thick. "It isn't." 3 months later, as Verilon's harsh winter gave way to spring, the colony celebrated its first new beginning since the war's end. The damaged structures were being rebuilt, supply lines to other worlds had been reestablished, and in the center of the revitalization stood an unexpected symbol of hope, a human Viralti family. On the ridge where Naren's memorial stone stood, Talon and Jake added a new marker, not a replacement, but a companion. It bore an inscription in both human and Viralti languages. "For those lost, who showed us courage. For those found, who taught us healing. Under the same stars, we rise together." Alara placed wildflowers at both stones, her head crest fluttering in the breeze. "Do you think Father would approve?" she asked Talon. The morning Talon found Alara teaching Jake the traditional Viralti greeting ritual, she paused in the doorway, watching silently. The human sat cross-legged on the floor, his brow furrowed in concentration as he attempted to position his fingers in the complex pattern that all Viralti children learned before their 5th cycle. "No, like this," Alara demonstrated patiently, her head crest rippling with amusement. "Your 4th finger needs to cross under, not over." Jake adjusted his hand position, large human fingers struggling with the delicate movements. "This would be easier if I had 4 fingers instead of 5, he joked. "Your wrist angle is wrong," Talon said, stepping into the room. Both turned in surprise. Without thinking, Talon moved forward and knelt beside Jake. She took his hand in hers, feeling the strange warmth of his skin against her scaled fingers. His pulse quickened at her touch, a reaction her warrior training had taught her to recognize in enemies, but that now held entirely different significance. "The greeting honors those who have fallen in battle," she explained, gently repositioning his fingers. "When performed correctly, it shows respect between warriors who recognize each other's valor." Jake's eyes never left her face as he repeated the gesture. "Like this?" "Yes." Her voice softened. "Perfect." Their hands remained connected a moment longer than necessary. Alara watched them with bright, knowing eyes. "Jake says humans have greeting rituals too," she announced. They pressed their palms together and moved them up and down. "A handshake," Jake clarified with a smile. "Though we have many different greetings, Talon released his hand reluctantly. Perhaps you could teach us some. Later that day, as Talon repaired a section of their dwelling's outer wall damaged in the last storm, she sensed Jake's approach before he spoke. I've been thinking about improving the water collection system, he said, handing her a tool before she asked for it. They had fallen into an easy rhythm of anticipating each other's needs. The rainy season will be ending soon. She nodded. The dry period is difficult here. Even the underground springs diminish. As they worked side by side, Talon became acutely aware of the shift in their dynamic. Where once silence between them had been tense and laden with unspoken hostility, now it held comfort and understanding. Jake respected her space, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, yet remained steadfastly present. His patience reminded her painfully of Naren. That evening, after finishing repairs and sharing a meal of local root vegetables and synthesized protein, Talon found herself watching Jake interact with Illyra. He was teaching her to fashion a small toy from scrap materials, something he called a spinning top. My grandfather taught me to make these, he explained as Illyra watched in fascination. When I was about your age. Did you fight in the war too? Illyra asked innocently. Jake's hand stilled momentarily. Yes, but he didn't. He was a builder, not a soldier. Like you're becoming again, Talon observed from the doorway. Jake looked up, his expression unguarded. I was never meant to be a soldier. The war, it happened to me, like it happened to everyone. He helped Illyra balance the finished top. What about you? Were you always a warrior? The question penetrated Talon's carefully maintained defenses. Few had ever asked who she was before her military service. I was training to be an atmospheric scientist, she admitted. I wanted to study habitable worlds. The war interrupted everything. After Illyra had gone to sleep, Talon found Jake outside, gazing at the stars. The tri-moons cast his features in silver light, highlighting the scar that ran from temple to jaw. Without her usual hesitation, she joined him. I should have left weeks ago, he said quietly, not looking at her. Why didn't you? She asked, though she already suspected the answer. Jake turned to face her, the honesty in his expression disarming. At first, I stayed because I was too injured to travel. Then I stayed because Illyra needed someone who could see beyond survival to possibility. He paused. And now, Talon prompted, her heart rate accelerating in a way it hadn't since her combat days. Now I stay because leaving would feel like losing part of myself. His voice lowered. I've lost enough in this war. I don't want to lose this too, whatever this is becoming. The words hummed between them, honest and vulnerable. Talon had commanded battalions, faced enemy fire without flinching, but this demanded a different kind of courage. Not just Illyra, she said, her voice barely audible. I have become accustomed to your presence. A smile touched Jake's lips at her formal phrasing. Is that the Viralti way of saying you'd miss me? Perhaps. He moved closer, slowly enough for her to retreat if desired. She didn't. When his hand touched her face, tracing the elegant ridges along her cheek, Talon closed her eyes. This crosses many boundaries, she whispered. Some boundaries need crossing, he replied. Their first kiss was tentative, an exploration of alien physiology and unexpected compatibility. Talon's mandibles brushed against his jaw as she learned the contours of his face. His lips were softer than she had imagined in the moments she'd allowed herself to wonder. Pulling back slightly, she studied him. The colony would not understand. Do you understand? He countered gently. Talon considered this. I understand that grief can create a void so vast, it seems impossible to fill. And yet, she touched his face, mirroring his earlier gesture. Here you are, filling spaces I thought would remain empty forever. That night, they discovered each other fully. The differences in their bodies created moments of awkwardness that gave way to laughter, and then to passion. Jake's skin against her scales, the strange harmony of human and Viralti anatomies, It should have been impossible, yet felt inevitable. After, as they lay together in the dim light, Jake traced the ceremonial scars that marked Talon's warrior status. Each ridge and line told the story of battles fought and rank earned. "Do you feel like you're betraying him?" Jake asked gently, intuiting the thoughts she hadn't voiced. Talon considered the question seriously. "No," she finally answered. Naren believed in living fully. He would not want eternal grief as his monument. She turned to face Jake, her amber eyes luminous in the darkness. "Do you feel you're betraying your people by loving their former enemy?" "You were never the enemy to me," he replied. "Just people fighting for your world, like we were. The real enemy was the conflict itself, the powers that drove us to violence." "Wisdom from a human," Talon observed with a click of her mandibles that Jake now recognized as her version of a smile. "Occasionally we stumble upon it," he teased back. Their newfound intimacy was interrupted 3 days later when the colony's emergency alert system, long dormant, blared to life. Talon bolted upright from sleep, warrior instincts instantly engaged. "What is it?" Jake asked, already reaching for his clothes. "Perimeter breach," she explained tersely, checking the ancient monitoring system. Multiple vessels approaching from the southern quadrant. They rushed to the colony's makeshift command center, where the few remaining residents had begun to gather. An elderly Viralti technician hunched over communications equipment. "Raiders," he announced gravely. "We've intercepted their transmissions. They believe the colony is abandoned. Easy pickings for salvage." "How many?" Talon asked, automatically assuming command. 5 ships, heavily armed, but outdated technology. Jake studied the sensor readings. "They're coming in a standard attack formation, expecting no resistance." His military training emerged seamlessly. "We can use that assumption against them." The assembled colonists, fewer than 60 scattered across the valley, looked between the human and their former commander, uncertainty evident in their postures. "He's right," Talon confirmed, standing shoulder to shoulder with Jake. "We make them believe they're facing a much larger defense force." Together, they outlined a strategy utilizing decoys, misdirection, and the colony's limited weaponry. The plan required precision timing and coordination, qualities both Jake and Talon had honed in their military careers. As they prepared defenses, positioning colonists and rigging sensors to create phantom heat signatures, Talon observed how naturally she and Jake worked together, anticipating each other's thoughts, building on each other's ideas. Their military backgrounds, once a source of division, now created an effortless partnership.